So today's episode 60, which means it's exactly 28 days till Durham, James and I have our next body comp weigh-in. And I'm feeling reasonably confident. Other than that little running quad setback I had a while ago, training's been pretty smooth and pretty consistent. But today, it's time to kick things up a notch. Today will be my last day of sugar. So metabolically, not all calories are created equal. Carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, they're slightly metabolized and digested differently within the body. And even within those families of fats, proteins, and carbohydrates, there's subtle variations and twists on how the body metabolizes and deals with those nutrients. When it comes to sugar though, sugar is particularly harmful, and here's how. Let's start with a slice of toast, which has about 100 calories, most of it coming from starch. Starch is made up of glucose. It's basically glucose on glucose on glucose on glucose. When we eat glucose, it stimulates your pancreas to secrete insulin. Now, insulin in the body kind of works like an Uber. It takes that glucose, shuttles it around the body, and takes it where we need it most. Some of that glucose is going to stay in your bloodstream where it can feed the brain. The brain only runs on glucose and ketones, so it's really important to keep your blood sugar nice and steady for that reason. The rest though, the majority of that glucose is going to go into your muscles. Now it enters your muscles with the help of a little valet service called GLUT4, which sucks that glucose into the muscle. Any excess glucose that you've got in your body will be taken to the liver where it's stored for safekeeping for later use. Now you can overeat on glucose like anything, but I'll talk about that in a second. Now let's talk sugar. Because my mum loves me, and because she loves Christmas, yesterday she sent me this package with these festive treats in it. Now coincidentally, these two guys here combined have about 100 calories, most of it coming from sugar. Sugar, or sucrose, is 50% glucose, 50% fructose. The glucose half, it does exactly the same as what happens with the toast. It gets Ubered around the body with that insulin and then gets taken with the valet service, the GLUT4, into your muscles. Some of it stays in the bloodstream to feed the brain. Now this is where things change. Fructose, it doesn't call for the insulin Uber because it doesn't respond to it. Instead, it walks and it heads straight for your liver. That fructose, once it enters the liver, has to be chemically rearranged and turned into glucose. Now that process, that fructose to glucose process, it's really expensive and it's really energy demanding. It takes a lot out of the liver. As a result, it creates and releases a lot of inflammatory byproducts. These make the liver sick and sorry, and they're spread out into the rest of the digestive system, making your entire organ system and your visceral system sick and sorry. Now that explains how sugar can make you sick and sorry and make your liver inflamed, but how does sugar make you fat? Because sugar is 50% fructose, and that fructose has to go straight to the liver to be processed, there's no insulin or GLUT4 to kind of drip feed it in. So the liver just gets slammed with this big dose of fructose. As a result, the liver kind of freaks out, and the first thing it is to do is, well, it's like, I'm just gonna store this as fat because there's just so much, I just need to deal with it. I'm just gonna turn it into fat. More specifically though, the fat that the liver produces from fructose is called VLDL, or very low density lipoproteins, which is another name for cholesterol, the bad cholesterol. In fact, VLDL is the worst cholesterol. So basically sugar, or more specifically the fructose component, it cheats the digestive system, cheats the liver, and accelerates that fat producing process. So when you combine that without the insulin situation and then the liver stress and the inflammation, you've got a perfect storm of lipogenesis. Now the same thing can happen when you overeat with glucose. This isn't exclusive to fructose, but there's kind of 4 key reasons why sugar is particularly harmful. Number 1, inflammation. In an inflamed liver and an inflamed digestive system from that fructose, it becomes harder to metabolize and work efficiently. As a result, the liver is more likely to start shifting towards making that bad cholesterol, storing down visceral fat, and making us sick. Number 2, there's just a volume issue. When you eat sugar versus starch, because of the 50% fructose that goes straight to the liver, that liver is going to fill up with glycogen faster. As a result, it's going to shift into making fat and making VLDL a lot faster and a lot quicker. Number 3, glycemic index. Now sugar has a super high glycemic index, which means it hits the bloodstream fast out of the gut. As a result, you get these big spikes and troughs in your glucose levels, your blood glucose levels. And number 4, When we eat sugar, there's not as much of a leptin response. Now, leptin is closely linked to insulin. It's the hormone that tells you you've had enough food. It's the satiety hormone. So when you eat sugar, which is 50% fructose, which doesn't stimulate insulin, we don't get as much of an effect. So you finish your meal, it's time for dessert, you can easily fit it in. It's always the way. You can always have room for dessert. It's like you've got a second stomach. You don't. There's no such thing as a dessert stomach. But what's happening is because sugar bypasses that satiety signaling system, you can always just squeeze in a little bit more dessert. And so that is why I'm going 0 sugar for the next 28 days. Starting from tomorrow. Now, it seems like a contradiction that I went and ate that chocolate after talking about how bad sugar is. The problem with sugar isn't the single doses or the little treats here and there. It's the accumulation of fructose and sugar over the course of a day. If you ever look at your diet and see what sort of foods, and especially packaged foods, are particularly bad, see how much sugar is in those, that's when you get in trouble. It's not the once-offs here and now, or a little bit of a treat on a Friday. That's not the issue. It's the accumulation of sugar over the course of the day that really causes the trouble.